Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today to talk about the cloud and cover off some ways that an information security management system can protect you, your clients, customers and everyone else that you interact with in your business. My name is James Keenan and I'm Information Security Business Unit Manager here at NQA, and with me today I have David Nutbrown, NQA's Principal Auditor for ISO 27001, and together we will attempt to tackle the information security items you need to know about with one of, if not the biggest networking changes seen in industry. We should also have some time for questions at the end, so stick with us. First, a little bit about NQA for anyone that doesn't know us. NQA are a leading certification body with presence around the world, having successfully certified businesses in all the territories you can see listed on the map now. We are well known for operating in the technology and engineering sectors, and we are consistently in the top 3 certification bodies for a wide range of standards right across the globe. Just some of the standards and industries that we certify in are on screen now. And we also provide training courses in those areas pitched at all experience levels you would need, from e-learning to tutor-led lead auditor courses in locations across the UK and Ireland. Please do go and check out our website or contact us for further details on the courses, including discount for existing clients. Now, for the reason we are here today, cloud. It's a massive subject for such a small, fluffy word. Cloud can seem like a complicated concept, with the very word conjuring images of data floating ethereally up in the sky for us to pluck down when we want, or before we even know that we want it. The truth is, cloud computing is just a user using a data center. In that way, it's not any different. Simply put, and most commonly, cloud computing is there when you need it, at the size or scale you need it at, and with only internet access required to reach it. It's a bit like your public library. You can go and borrow a book. Popular ones always had lots of copies available. Keep that book for as long as you need it, minus the late fees, of course, as you pay for what you need in the cloud, but the analogy almost works. Then when you're finished with it, somebody else can use it. All this with nobody needing to spend upfront to own the product. You will recognise cloud creeping into many discussions with the fast becoming ubiquitous suffix as a service of SaaS, SaaS, IaaS, PaaS. That can be found in the marketing sections of all the products and services you're looking at these days. In the same way, as a towering, mighty, moody cumulonimbus is not the same as the light and wispy cirrus, there are many different types of cloud doing different things. Private versus public. ISACA defines private cloud as a cloud infrastructure provisioned for exclusive use by a single organisation comprising of multiple consumers, for example, business units of an organisation. It may be owned, managed, and operated by the organisation, a third party, or a combination of those. It may be on or off-premise hosted. Think of it as an organisation's internal cloud that they use exclusively and separated from others. Public cloud is defined as a cloud infrastructure that is provisioned for open use by the general public. It may be owned, managed, and operated by a business, academic institution, or government. It exists on the premises of the cloud provider. Think the big 3, well, top 2 that we know about just now, so Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google. Let's also not forget hybrid cloud, that is a combination of both those types. We mentioned the various as a service items. Let's take a look at the main ones in the context of today. Software as a service, SaaS. The client uses the provider's applications through a web browser, app, or other interface. Common examples of this would be Salesforce or Jira from Atlassian. An example of SaaS at home would be your Netflix or your Spotify. Platform as a service, PaaS. Providers run the platform where the customers build and deploy their applications. Infrastructure as a service, IaaS. This is where virtual machines come in and is most like having your on-premise infrastructure but hosted away from you. This is the AWS/Microsoft model that most people mean when they talk of the cloud. What are we seeing right now out there? Well, businesses moving to the cloud was happening before COVID, but accelerated to warp speed during the pandemic. A growing proportion of the businesses we visit for audit are remote first, fully in the cloud companies with no offices and no infrastructure that tie them. It has really facilitated affordable and scalable startups to thrive and giving existing companies the sort of flexibility they never had, all at an instant or even automatically if you pay for it. For some companies, the move to cloud was an easy discussion for the board, as it allowed them to continue trading. It really played into their business continuity aims and plans at the time. However, capital expenditure versus operational expenditure is now being questioned as prices increase year on year. The yearly subscription cost is not quite as easy a discussion as it was before, and some companies that no longer require staff to run their networks are employing people to run their subscriptions to ensure costs stay managed. In an elastic and scalable cloud world, it can fast get out of hand. Some businesses are looking at lowering cost of equipment for hosting on-site and are seriously considering reverting to an on-premise infrastructure or a more hybridized version of that. There are some unique challenges that come with securing a cloud environment, and they haven't always been completely understood. I would encourage you to take a look at the shared responsibility model for your chosen provider, but they all look quite similar to this that we're shown on screen just now. You cannot abdicate your security responsibilities by moving to the cloud, and these sorts of matrices help you understand where you still have roles to complete, or indeed where your provider will do that for you, at least in a security sense. As you can see, SaaS has most security items covered for you, ranging all the way over to IaaS, where the client has a lot more to do. And of course, as a comparison, on-premise hosting is all down to the owner. Now, I'll hand over to David, who's going to go a bit deeper into how a management system can help with keeping on top of your responsibilities. David. Hello, David.
Hello, yeah, that's much better. So thanks, James. Thanks for the handover, and hi, everybody. Yep, if you could just click again, and one more time, and one more time.
There
cool.
We go.
So in this section of the webinar, it's my intention to flesh out the overview that you've just been given by James, and deployment can offer to help you in understanding both the opportunities that a cloud to offer and also the downfalls or the risks that, when unmanaged, can pose significant danger to you organizationally and to your information. I'll then use the plan, do, check, act cycle with a specific focus on ISO 27001 to demonstrate how a well-maintained information security management system can help you to manage your cloud environment risk. It's important to note at this point, though, that I'm only going to draw on a hand-picked selection of clauses and controls. There are many more within the standards and within 27002, which will help to bolster your cloud security posture. Slide, please. So if we jump straight in to the opportunities and risks. Operating in the cloud has got a lot of benefits. James has already mentioned many. The list on the screen at the moment, if you click again, and one more time, and one more time. Yep, so the list on this screen at the moment is just intended to be a snapshot. The top one here is probably the most significant, perpetual access. And perpetual access can be a little bit of a double-edged sword. If you're operating in the cloud, particularly in the public cloud, you should be able to access your information from anywhere at any time, as long as you've got the right credentials. But the flip side to this is that any credential breach would leave you vulnerable from anywhere at any time. So with that in mind, access controls, specifically those role-based access controls and multi-factor authentication, they become increasingly important in a cloud environment. We have other benefits, such as elasticity, the ability to increase capacity in an instant, or the ability to scale your network at the click of a button. You also have near real-time backup. And also, there's the ability to spin up virtual environments and networks at the drop of a hat. But there are drawbacks, though, to operating in the cloud. And a current trend that I'm noticing is that managing an organization's cloud environment is now turning into a full-time job due to that constant change in the cloud service providers offering. CSPs are constantly evolving their cloud offerings. And this has led to companies now paying more and more attention as to how they monitor on a day-to-day basis their network and their network performance in the cloud. We're moving away from what I would term as the bad old days, whereby a lot of organizations would just say, we're in the cloud, we don't need to worry about that. Our service provider does everything for us. To a newer, a more practical and pragmatic view, whereby there's much more awareness of the shared responsibility model, and organizations are being much more proactive in their approach to cloud and cloud security management. Other drawbacks or risks can be related to data offshoring. Do you as an organization or any of your customers have a requirement for your data or their data to remain within the confines of a geographical region or area? Have you assessed this? Does your current cloud offering allow you to dictate where your information is stored? And James has already touched on costs, so I won't dwell on that at all. So opportunity and risk in mind, there really are endless ways in which implementation of the ISO 27000 family of standards offer a framework to manage them. And I'll take us on a little bit of a 27001, 27002 journey shortly. So the next 4 slides will follow Plan, Do, Check, Act, and they'll show one way in which 27001, 27002 can help to manage the full life cycle of a cloud deployment. So I'm going to focus on public cloud for the next few slides, and I'll start here at the planning phase. The number one decision that any organization will make regarding cloud is, which service provider do I go with? Now, this really is a decision that needs to be made in a fully educated manner. You need to gather all the facts, analyze them. And the standard here really does come into its own, with clause 4. What is your organizational context? What are your own needs and expectations and those of your customers? How are these needs and expectations realized by each of the service providers that you're looking at? And does one cloud service provider meet those requirements better than others? And then we have clause 6, which takes over next. What do these requirements mean to us when we identify those risks and opportunities? Which cloud service provider will allow us to have the requisite level of control in order to best manage our risks? So straight away, the standard has helped us with decision number 1. Who are we going to use as our cloud service provider? Next up, and again, this definitely falls within clause 6. Especially if you're migrating to the cloud, it's how do we move our information into the cloud? What risks are associated with this? And again, which controls will we need to put in place to ensure the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of our information, both during and post-migration? Now, at this point, we're still in the planning phase of the PDCA cycle. As we move into the next phase, let's see what controls we could be using. Slide, please, James. So here we are in the do, or essentially, the day-to-day management, the operation of our cloud deployment. We've now selected our provider. We've migrated into their cloud. Our information sits in their cloud. Now, how can 27001, 27002, how can they help us when it comes to operating in the cloud in a secure manner? In truth, there are many controls from Annex A which fit this bill, and I've selected just a handful which I'll talk through. One of the big sellers for deploying to a public cloud is that you can have access at any time by anyone, as I've already stated, with the correct credentials. And therefore, a major part of security management in the cloud is that of A9, access control. You really will need to have allocated responsibility for an admin user, a competent admin user who will be able to add new users, to determine and manage user permissions, critically to review those permissions at regular intervals, and also, and this is linked into your HR processes, removal of access rights for those users who've either changed roles or who no longer need access to certain areas of your environment, and also to those that have left your organization. And now that you're operating in the cloud, just remember, access by anyone from anywhere at any time. So removal of those access rights is absolutely essential. It's a critical process and it must happen in the most timely of manners. The next control that I've chosen to talk about quickly is information transfer. We are now storing our information essentially on somebody else's computer in a remote data center that we, in most cases, will never ever visit, and we'll never even have a need to visit. We need to manage how we securely transfer that data. How do we access the cloud? Do we use encrypted file transfer protocols? How do we ensure that all of our end user devices are configured to securely communicate with our cloud environment and to pull that information and push it in a secure manner? Share externally. Can we spin up separate secure environments in order to as well? Another consideration. And there really are many considerations, all of which require management in one shape, way, or form. Next up is capacity management. And in theory, this is pretty simple in the cloud. Your cloud service provider monitors your capacity. They alert you when your thresholds are met, and they expand and charge you. However, we are seeing a trend whereby organizations now have declined that option for auto expansion. And this really is linked to that sometimes really significant cost implication. And then lastly, and this is something that a lot of organizations seem to take for granted at the moment, it's event logging. The big three cloud service providers have got very, very effective event logging and alerting tools, especially if you set those alerts up correctly. But it's still no excuse to just leave log management to your service provider. It really is important that as an organization, you are aware of the significant events that are happening across your network. Just think there really is no substitute for having somebody who knows what normal looks like and somebody who can spot the abnormal. And what is important to note though, is that most cloud service providers, they really do have incredibly effective tools. They've got very technical controls in place for managing your cloud environment. the weak link in the chain. The weak link in the chain here is more often than not, you must have somebody within your organization who is competent in these tools and who understands how best to implement the cloud service provider's technical controls to use their dashboards in a manner which complements your own operations without compromising on security. So slide, please. Now, A15, supplier relationships, there are two really good controls that are perfect here when it comes to the check part of the cycle. So I'll point out first, 15.1.2, addressing security within supplier agreements. Now, although this is something that realistically you'd be addressing in the planning phase, if you get this control correct at the outset, then it gives you something to refer to when it comes to the second control, A15.2.1, that monitoring and review of supplier services. For most of our listeners today, the most business critical relationship you will have is your relationship to your cloud service provider. If you are 100% in the cloud, then it really is imperative that you understand the agreement that you've entered into with your service provider, where your responsibilities lie and also where their responsibilities are, and how you can hold your provider to account. Now, James spoke earlier about the shared responsibility model. And by identifying exactly where you sit within this shared responsibility model, you should be able to ensure that any agreement you enter into aligns with your expectations. And this can be difficult when entering into contracts with the key players, but if you sign the wrong agreement with the wrong provider, then you'll have no recourse in future should you require it. So, on to check properly. What tools does ISO have in its arsenal to help here? As I mentioned, A15.2.1, monitoring and review of supplier services. This control is all about setting up a process whereby you give yourself assurance that your suppliers, in this case, your cloud service provider, so it's that assurance that your CSP is actually providing the service that you agreed to. And there are many ways in which you can monitor the performance of your suppliers. But an alarming trend I'm seeing is that organizations are simply signing up to a CSP, usually one of the big three. Then they just assume that their cloud service provider dictates the rules of the relationship, and organizationally, we stay loyal to them for years, regardless of performance, regardless of any changes to the services that they offer, or even regardless of any of our own internal requirements. Slide, please. So to complete the cycle, we go on to act. If we're not unhappy with our service provider, what can we do? We can leave that relationship. You can vote with your feet. It is within your power to leave and to switch provider. However, change management is key here. You really must manage any exit from the cloud or any migration from provider to provider in a controlled manner. And having a solid change management process in place will help ease the process of ending the original relationship and starting the next in order to ensure this occurs in as seamless a way as possible. So just remember here, planned change is key. So slide, please. I'm going to hand you back to James. Thanks for listening to me.
Yeah. Hi everyone. David mentioned the benefits of ISO 27001 there, and the management system giving you that framework, that control and the enhanced understanding. But there are other standards that can be really useful and that we're seeing people integrate into great benefit. The family of bolt-ons to 27001 are helpful here. There is, of course, privacy, 27701, but more pertinent to today, there is 27017, which is an information security framework for organizations using or about to use cloud services. There's also 27018, the framework that focuses on protection of personal data in the cloud. Both have extra additions to the 27001 controls that dovetail into your existing ISMS. Consider the sort of things you're being asked for on your supplier forms right now. These bolt-ons combine into the gold-plated solution that builds on what you have, keeping it simple, using language and methods you're used to aligning with your internal and third-party external audit programs. Now, that's us at the end of the presentation today. We've had a couple of IT issues. I think that seems to be the flavour of today. I see BA has just grounded some flights off the back of some IT issues. So if all we've got wrong is that our slides are moving on unbidden, then I'll settle that just now. But what we'll do is we'll move into questions and answers. So thank you for listening for that. And we'll have a quick check of any questions that have arrived now. I don't think I'm seeing any at the moment. David, have you seen any questions just now? Or are we still waiting for people to type?
No, all got nothing in there, James. I think we've stunned the audience into silence.
Or maybe we've just been talking to each other for the last half hour. Nobody else can hear. But yeah, we'll find out soon enough. We'll just give a couple of minutes for any questions coming in. I'll ask you a question, Dave.
Where's there? We've got Guy's got his hand raised. Guy, do you want to just type your question in, please?
David, while Guy's typing that question in, what would you say the most popular cloud provider is that you come across when you're out there and your auditors are out there seeing?
Honestly, for me, it's a 50-50 split. It is Azure and it's AWS. You couldn't put cigarette paper between them. And then Google seems to be quite a distant third in my in my opinion, but seems to be more startups sat in Google. And then as the organizations grow, then they jump into one of the other two players. So that's that's what I'm seeing there. And
of course, from a software as a service, we've got any amount of sort of things, I suppose, that are from the suite that Atlassian have to anything in there. We're seeing a lot, but from an infrastructure point, certainly it seems to be between Microsoft and Amazon at the moment. But yeah, now we've got Guy's question typed in here just now, David. Seems to be about credentials, which I think you mentioned. So do you have, or indeed would we be allowed to give any recommendations on control of how users maintain credit? Maybe the way to ask this is, what are you seeing out there? How are people controlling or maintaining credentials?
Yeah, essentially. So let me see. So what we're seeing most, or certainly sort of some of the better practices that we are seeing when it comes to credentials, is that people are veering away from the, do you remember the old advice of change your password regularly? Change it every 90 days, but write it down. What we're seeing here is, so credential-wise, MFA being brought in, but actually, when it comes to those username and passwords, it's go complicated, go big, but don't change for a long time. Monitor the dark web, have a look at, have you been pawned, to see if your credentials are on the dark web, and if they are, then change. But it's very much make it as complicated as possible, but don't change as regularly as we used to. And I think that mirrors the NCSC's advice as well.
Yeah, exactly, David. Yeah, and from a mirror on that one, that's certainly something we see, and hopefully we've answered Guy's question there. We have tried to open up the mics before in these calls, and it never quite manages. So, Guy, if we haven't answered that question, feel free to reach out to us separately after this. We're always available.
I'm looking there. Guy's dropped a bit of a comment, and I agree 100% with this. He said his takeaway from this morning is that if something's not working, don't fear the change, manage it. And it's exactly that. I think it goes back to the point that I was making, where people sit with their providers and they'll stay with them forever. And I think a lot of that reason is because, one, they are afraid of moving, they are afraid of making those big changes. But no, don't fear the change, manage it. You know, go with the provider that suits your requirements at the time is you know, absolutely the takeaway that I would say from this.
Yeah, indeed, and certainly I've been hearing about some of those big providers will actually do sort of reviews of how you're using your cloud, certainly from a infrastructure point, and they'll see how efficiently you're doing, and they'll spend time looking and see where they can help you. So if they do have those options, or indeed if you're working with clients who use the cloud, make sure that they get the most advantage out of what those providers can do for them as well. They're paying a lot for a product, so make sure they get all that support that's available. In some cases, it's just about knowing about it. So
it really is those tools, and I said in my part of the webinar, the tools, the dashboards, the settings are there. You know, everything is there. It's at your disposal. It really is about understanding how to use those tools to get the best benefit for you organizationally. You know, there's no substitute for just having somebody who is hands-on with your, you know, network on a day-to-day basis, who can sort of log in, play about with the controls, manage them, but also monitor them. Because what a lot of clients say to me is, almost on a weekly basis, the big cloud providers, they're changing their settings, they're playing with their dashboards.
yeah.
You know, something might be in one part of the dashboard today and a completely different part tomorrow. And only by having that day-to-day hands-on approach will you be able to actively monitor and stay on top of those things.
Yep, exactly, and making sure that your policies still actually match what's what's on those various dashboards as well. Wouldn't be the first time that some things have changed, and it's different to what you've put down in your policy. Anyway, thank you for that, David, and more importantly, thank you, Guy, for the question and indeed the statement. Do we have any more questions out there at all? Looks like we're done for questions. So what we'll do is we'll move into the final area just now, and that is just a quick reminder on some of the training that's available. There's lots of different training available from the NQA website, or indeed, you know, drop us a line and get in contact. Particularly of interest just now is the 27001 transition. That's still a very busy course, and of course with our accreditation on its way, we'll soon be getting out there and transitioning people to the 2022 version of the standard. So have a look at the training there, make sure you can demonstrate competency within your internal auditing. But there's also cloud offering on its way there soon as well, and that's another thing David and I will look to do, is actually dive into the actual cloud standards themselves, the guidance notes themselves. We're looking sort of at the wider sort of cloud picture today, but we will focus on what those ISOs look like as well on a later webinar. We mentioned the support. There's some ways of getting in contact with us. We've got the old telephone number there, obviously our blogs. We'll summarize this in a blog as well at some point, and email available to us, and LinkedIn and Twitter, which is always good. So if you need us, we are available. Please do reach out. And one last check at the questions. There aren't any more. So thank you everyone for your attention this morning. It's been a great opportunity to sit here and talk to you guys about cloud, and hopefully you're out there with some of those things a little bit easier now. And if there's anything else you'd like, don't hesitate to get in contact, and we will see if there's something, another webinar or something we can do to go even further into cloud. So I'll just wrap up there just now and say bye, and see you at the next one. Thank you. Bye now.